Sometimes the most important decisions in life come disguised as simple business transactions. Richard Hartley thought he was just signing another demolition order, but what happened next would change everything he believed about his past. The old orphanage represented nothing more than prime real estate until a 7-year-old girl bursts through the heavy doors. "Please don't sign the papers," Emma cries, clutching a faded teddy bear against her small chest. Security moves forward, but Richard's hand freezes mid-signature. The bear is unmistakable. Brown fur worn smooth by countless embraces, a missing left eye, and a red ribbon around its neck. 30 years ago, he donated that exact bear to St. Mary's, along with a handwritten note promising to protect the place. That raised him. But how could this little girl possibly know? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The mahogany conference table stretches before Richard Hartley like a battlefield, where millions of dollars exchange hands with the stroke of a pen. At 62, his silver hair perfectly styled and his charcoal suit tailored to precision, he commands respect in every room he enters. The wall behind him displays framed photographs of luxury developments bearing his name: Hartley Towers, Hartley Commons, Hartley Heights, monuments to a man who learned early that survival meant building something bigger than yourself. But now, staring at this small girl with dirt-streaked cheeks and defiant eyes, Richard feels something crack inside the carefully constructed fortress of his adult life. The teddy bear in her arms isn't just similar to the one he remembered. It's identical, down to the tiny scar on its left paw, where he'd accidentally cut it with safety scissors during craft time in 1975. "Sir, shall I call security?" his assistant, Margaret, whispers, her pen hovering nervously over her notepad. The investors shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs, checking expensive watches and exchanging glances that speak of delayed profits and mounting impatience. Richard raises his hand, silencing the room. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma." Her voice carries the particular steadiness that comes from children who've learned too early that adults can't always be trusted. "Emma Sullivan." The surname hits Richard like cold water. Sullivan. He hasn't heard that name spoken aloud in decades, though it whispers through his dreams most nights. Tommy Sullivan, freckled face, gap-toothed grin, and the unwavering belief that tomorrow would always be better than today. His best friend, his brother in everything but blood, until that terrible day when... "How do you know about this bear?" Richard's voice comes out rougher than intended. Emma clutches the toy tighter. "Sister Catherine showed me the letter. The one you wrote when you gave him to the orphanage. You promised you'd always protect this place." The letter. Richard's throat constricts as the memory surfaces. His 18-year-old self, standing in Sister Mary Margaret's office on the day he aged out of the system. He'd worked 3 jobs that summer to buy the teddy bear and a dozen others, wanting to give something back to the place that had housed him for 6 years. The letter had been an impulse, written on borrowed stationery in his careful script. "I promised to protect this place forever because it protected me when I had nowhere else to go." Young and earnest, full of noble intentions that got buried. Under student loans, business deals, and the relentless pursuit of security. When had he stopped thinking about that promise? When had St. Mary's Children's Home become just another property acquisition? The investors are growing restless. James Morrison, the lead partner from Morrison and Associates, clears his throat pointedly. "Mr. Hartley, we have a schedule to maintain. The demolition crew is contracted to begin Monday morning." "Monday?" Richard's head snaps up. "That's in 3 days, which is why we need these signatures today." Morrison continues, his tone carrying the practiced patience of a man accustomed to moving millions through paperwork. "The luxury condominiums will transform this entire neighborhood. Property values will increase by 40% minimum." Emma steps closer to the table, and Richard notices she's not intimidated by the roomful of adults in expensive suits. There's something familiar in her posture, the same defiant tilt of the chin that Tommy used to get when adults told him his dreams were too big for an orphan kid. "This place saves children," Emma says, her young voice cutting through the corporate jargon like a bell. "Where will kids like me go if you tear it down?" Richard studies her face more carefully. She has Tommy's green eyes and the same stubborn cowlick that refused to lie flat no matter how much water you used. But there's something else, a maturity in her expression that speaks of losses too heavy for such small shoulders. "How old are you, Emma?" "7. I've been at St. Mary's for 2 months. She pauses, then adds with the matter-of-fact tone children use for devastating truths, "Since my daddy died." The words slice through Richard's chest. He finds himself leaning forward, studying every detail of her face. The resemblance to Tommy is unmistakable now that he's looking for it. Not just the eyes and hair, but the way she holds herself, the careful way she chooses her words. "Emma, what was your father's name?" "Thomas Sullivan, but everyone called him Tommy." She tilts her head, curious. "Did you know him?" "Sister Catherine said you might have." The conference room seems to tilt. Richard grips the edge of the table, his knuckles white against the dark wood. Tommy survived. Tommy grew up, had a daughter, lived a life beyond the walls of St. Mary's. And now he's gone. And his little girl stands here holding the same teddy bear that once provided comfort to 2 scared boys who had nothing but each other. Morrison's voice cuts through Richard's shock. "Mr. Hartley, touching as this is, we have contracts to honor. If you're not prepared to sign today, I need a moment." Richard's voice carries an authority that brooks no argument. "Everyone out, now!" The investors exchange worried glances, but they know better than to push Richard Hartley when he uses that tone. They file out with polite murmurs and barely concealed frustration, leaving Richard alone with Emma and the ghost of his past. Sister Catherine appears in the doorway as if she'd been waiting. She's older than Richard remembered, her hair now completely silver beneath her simple blue habit, her face lined with the gentle wear of someone who spent 40 years caring for children nobody else wanted. "Hello, Richard," she says softly. "I wondered when you'd come back." "Sister Catherine." He stands slowly, feeling every one of his 62 years. "You knew about Emma, about Tommy. You knew I'd remember. I hoped you would." She moves to stand beside Emma, her weathered hand resting protectively on the child's shoulder. "Tommy spoke of you often. Even after all these years, he never forgot his best friend." Richard's chest tightens. "He looked for me for 20 years. He hired private investigators, searched public records, even tried to contact your business directly. But Richard Hartley, the successful developer, seemed very different from Richie, the orphan boy he remembered. The accusation hangs unspoken between them. Richard had legally changed his name from Richard Hayes to Richard Hartley when he turned 21, taking his mother's maiden name to distance himself from the father who'd abandoned him. He'd built walls around his past so high that even old friends couldn't scale them. "Where is he?" Richard's voice barely qualifies as a whisper. Emma looks up at him with those achingly familiar green eyes. "Daddy's in heaven now. The cancer took him away 3 months ago, but before he died, he made me promise to find the man who gave away the teddy bears. He said that man would understand what it means to lose everything and find family anyway." Richard sinks back into his chair, the demolition papers forgotten. The empire he's built suddenly feels hollow, meaningless next to this 7-year-old girl who carries her father's eyes and her own quiet strength. Through the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, he can see St. Mary's Children's Home across the street. 3 stories of weathered brick and hope, where dozens of children are probably finishing their afternoon snacks right now, unaware that their home hangs in the balance. "Sister Catherine," he says finally, "I need to see that letter." The basement of St. Mary's Children's Home smells of old wood and forgotten dreams. Emma leads Richard down the narrow staircase, her small hand confident on the worn banister, while Sister Catherine follows with a heavy flashlight that cuts through shadows accumulated over decades. Tommy found it first, Emma explains, her voice echoing off the stone walls. When he was 12, just like me. Well, almost like me. She pauses at the bottom step, suddenly looking very young. Daddy said he was looking for treasure, but what he found was better. Richard's chest tightens. He remembers Tommy's fascination with hidden things, secret passages, buried treasure, mysteries waiting to be solved. It's fitting that his final gift to his daughter would be another mystery, another treasure hunt. They move deeper into the basement, past storage rooms filled with donated furniture and boxes of outgrown clothes. Emma stops at what appears to be a solid brick wall, running her fingers along the mortar until she finds what she's looking for. "Here," she says, pressing against a loose brick. There's a soft click, and a section of the wall swings inward on hidden hinges, revealing a small alcove, barely large enough for a child to crawl into. "Good heavens," Sister Catherine breathes. "In all my years here, I never knew." Emma disappears into the opening and emerges moments later, clutching a metal box about the size of a shoebox, its surface green with age and corrosion. "Daddy said you'd know what to do with this." Richard accepts the box with trembling hands. It's heavier than expected, and something rattles inside when he tilts it. A small brass plate on the lid reads, "For the future, from the kids who made it this far." 1952, 1995. 43 years of secrets, Sister Catherine murmurs. The children have been hiding this for 43 years. Richard finds the latch and opens the box. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags to protect them from moisture, are dozens of items. Photographs, letters, small toys, report cards, newspaper clippings. The archaeology of young lives, preserved by children who understood that someone, someday, might need proof that they existed. On top lies a manila envelope with Richie written in Tommy's distinctive handwriting, all capitals, slightly slanted. To the right, Richard's hands shake as he opens it. The first item is a photograph. Two boys, maybe 11 and 12 years old, standing in front of St. Mary's main entrance. One boy has Richard's dark hair and serious expression. The other, Tommy's. Red hair and irrepressible grin. They have their arms slung around each other's shoulders, and both are holding teddy bears, dozens of them, piled around their feet like a soft brown mountain. Richard remembers that day. It was Christmas morning, 1974, and he'd used his newspaper, route money to buy every teddy bear he could find at the downtown Woolworths. Not just for him and Tommy, but for all the younger kids who might not get anything else. Sister Mary Margaret had taken the picture, saying it was important to document acts of generosity. Beneath the photograph is a letter, and Richard recognizes his own 12-year-old handwriting. "Dear future me, I hope when you read this, you remember what it feels like to have nothing and then find everything. Tommy and me, we decided to start this box so kids like us don't get forgotten. We're going to be something important someday, and when we are, we're going to come back and make sure nobody ever has to feel scared and alone like we did." Tommy says he's going to be a teacher so he can help kids learn they're smarter than people think. "I'm going to be rich so I can fix things for people who can't fix them themselves. We promise we won't forget where we came from. Your friend, I. Hope, Richie Hayes, P.S. If something happens to one of us, the other one has to keep the promise for both." Richard's vision blurs. The confident, idealistic boy who wrote those words feels like a stranger, yet the memory of writing them floods back with painful clarity. He and Tommy had sealed their letters together, making a pact that seemed unbreakable at the time. Emma watches him with those knowing green eyes. Daddy kept his promise. He became a teacher, just like he said. 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary. He said little kids are the most honest people in the world. "And I forgot mine," Richard whispers. "No," Emma says firmly. "You just got lost. For a while." Daddy said that happens sometimes. He said even good people can forget who they are when they get scared. Richard continues searching through the box. There are dozens of other letters, photographs, small mementos, a record of children who passed through St. Mary's doors and refused to disappear without a trace. Here's a newspaper clipping about Maria Santos, who became a doctor and opened a free clinic. Here's a wedding photo from David Chen, who became a social worker. Here's a report card from Jennifer Washington, straight A's, with a note that she's now a federal judge. Each item represents a life that St. Mary's helped save, a future that wouldn't have existed without this place. The weight of it all, the accumulated dreams, struggles and triumphs, settles on Richard's shoulders like a responsibility he never realized he'd abandoned. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper, is another teddy bear. This one is pristine, never played with a small tag attached. For Richie when he comes home. Love, Tommy. Richard cradles the bear, and for a moment he's 12 years old again, believing in tomorrow, believing in friendship, believing that promises matter more than profit. Emma sits beside him on the dusty basement floor, still holding her own worn bear, and he realizes that this moment, this reckoning with his past, was inevitable from the day he first walked away from St. Mary's. Emma, he says softly, how did you know? How did you know I'd be in that boardroom today? She looks up at him with an expression far too wise for 7 years old. Sister Catherine gets the newspaper every day. She saw the article about the demolition, and Daddy always said that when someone's about to make a terrible mistake, sometimes you have to be brave enough to stop them. Above them, Richard can hear the faint sounds of children playing, laughing, living their lives in the sanctuary that he's about to destroy. The demolition papers wait in his conference room across the street, but they feel like relics from another life, another man's priorities. The time capsule changes everything. This isn't just about a building anymore, it's about 43 years of children who refuse to be forgotten, and the promises that shaped them into the people they became. The hospital bracelet is small, child-sized, yellowed with age. Richard turns it over in his hands, reading the faded print. Thomas Sullivan, age 12, admitted March 15th, 1975. The date sends a chill through him. He remembers that day. The day everything changed, the day he stopped believing in promises. We found it in his personal effects. Sister Catherine explains gently. She's brought Richard to her small office on the second floor of St. Mary's, where afternoon sunlight filters through lace curtains and illuminates walls covered with decades of children's artwork. Tommy never threw anything away that reminded him of his time here. Emma sits cross-legged on the floor, carefully sorting through a shoebox of her father's belongings. Photographs, report cards, small treasures that a man keeps to remember who he used to be. She holds up a picture of Tommy as an adult, wearing a tie covered with cartoon dinosaurs, surrounded by a classroom full of 8-year-olds. This was his favorite tie, she says proudly. He said it made the kids laugh, and laughing makes learning easier. Richard studies the photograph. Tommy grew up handsome, with laugh lines around those familiar green eyes, and an easy smile that suggests a man comfortable with himself. It's hard to reconcile this confident teacher with the scared, sick boy Richard abandoned all those years ago. What happened that day? Richard asks, though part of him dreads the answer. The accident. I remember Tommy falling, but then everything gets fuzzy. Sister Catherine supplies kindly. That's what trauma does sometimes. It protects us by blurring the edges of memories too painful to carry clearly. She moves to a filing cabinet and withdraws a thick folder. Inside are medical records, incident reports, correspondence with social services, the bureaucratic aftermath of a 12-year-old boy's brush with death. Tommy fell from the oak tree in the backyard. Sister Catherine begins, settling into her chair. You boys had climbed it dozens of times, but that day the branch broke. He hit his head on the way down, fractured his skull. For 3 days we didn't know if he'd wake up. Richard's memory begins to clear. Like fog lifting from a landscape he'd forced himself to forget. He remembers the sirens, the ambulance, Tommy unconscious and pale on a stretcher. He remembers the blood on the ground beneath the oak tree, the terrible silence that followed his best friend's fall. I visited him, Richard says slowly, in the hospital. I remember sitting beside his bed, talking to him even though he couldn't hear me. Every day for a week, Sister Catherine confirms. You brought him drawings, told him about everything happening at St. Mary's. The nurses said you barely left his side. Then why did I stop going? Why can't I remember? Emma looks up from her father's photos. Daddy said you got scared. He said, sometimes when people you love get hurt really bad, you start thinking it might be your fault. The memory crashes back like a dam breaking. Richard had been the one who suggested climbing higher that day, who dared Tommy to reach the top branches. When Tommy fell, Richard blamed himself, 12 years old and drowning in guilt too heavy for a child's shoulders to carry. I thought I killed him, Richard whispers. And so you stopped visiting, stopped talking about him, tried to pretend the friendship never existed, Sister Catherine says, with the gentle understanding of someone who's seen this pattern before. Classic survivor's guilt. Though we didn't have a name for it back then. Richard picks up another document from the folder, a letter written in a shaky, uncertain hand. The letterhead reads, St. Mary's Hospital Pediatric Ward. Dear Richie, the letter begins. They say I can write now, even though my hand still shakes some. I've been awake for 2 days and keep asking for you, but Sister says you don't want to come. I don't understand why you're mad at me. Was it something I did? Please come see me. I miss you. Your friend, Tommy. P.S. The teddy bear you gave me is on my bed. He helps when I get scared. The words blur as Richard's eyes fill with tears. He wrote to me 7 letters. Sister Catherine says quietly, we have them all. Tommy never understood why you stopped coming. He thought he'd done something wrong. Emma moves closer to Richard, still holding the photograph of her father. But he wasn't angry. Daddy said being angry was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. He said you were just a scared kid who thought he was protecting himself. Richard sets down the hospital bracelet and looks around Sister Catherine's office, really looks at it for the first time. The walls are covered with photographs spanning decades. Children at Christmas parties, graduation ceremonies, birthday celebrations. In many of the pictures, he recognizes the younger version of Sister Catherine, her hair darker, but her smile unchanged. How many children have passed through here, he asks. Over the years, thousands. Some stay for a few weeks while family situations stabilize. Others, like you and Tommy, become long-term residents. Each one leaves something behind, a memory, a lesson, a piece of their heart. She moves to a large map mounted on the wall, covered with colored pins. These represent our former residents. Red pins are within 100 miles, blue pins are further out, green pins are international. We try to keep track when we can. Richard studies the map. The pins stretch across the country and beyond, a constellation of lives that began in this building. What do the colors mean for outcomes? Oh, that's not about success or failure. Sister Catherine smiles. That's just geography. Every pin represents a success story, Mr. Hartley. Every child who walked out these doors with more hope than they had when they arrived. Emma has moved to the window and is watching the children in the playground below. Will they have to find new homes if the building goes away? The question hits Richard like a physical blow. In all his calculations about property values and profit margins, he hadn't considered the immediate human cost. These aren't just statistics or future concerns. These are real children with real needs who would be scattered to the winds if St. Mary's closes. There's a waiting list, Sister Catherine admits reluctantly. Other facilities in the area are overcrowded. Some of our children would likely end up in the state system, possibly separated from siblings, certainly farther, from the schools and communities they know. Richard picks up Tommy's hospital bracelet again, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to carry such enormous meaning. His best friend survived the fall, grew up to become exactly what he'd dreamed of being, and spent his adult life helping children the same way St. Mary's had helped them. And now Tommy's daughter sits in the same office where two scared boys once planned their futures, facing the possibility that her safe harbor might disappear. Sister Catherine, Richard says carefully, what would it take to keep this place running? Not just the building, but the programs, the staff, the mission. She raises an eyebrow. Are you asking as Richard Hartley, the developer, or as Richie Hayes, the boy who promised to protect this place? I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. Emma turns from the window, her expression serious. Daddy said the difference is what you do when nobody's watching. He said that's when you find out who you really are. Through the office door, Richard can hear the sounds of daily life at St. Mary's. Children's laughter, staff conversations, the ordinary miracles of a place where broken things get mended. Across the street, his investors are probably pacing his conference room, checking their phones, calculating the cost of every delayed minute. He has a choice to make, and for the first time in decades, the numbers don't matter as much as the names, Tommy's name, Emma's name, his own forgotten name, and the promises that define who we become when nobody's watching. The demolition is scheduled for Monday morning. That gives him exactly 3 days to figure out how to honor a promise he made 30 years ago, or watch the last piece of his authentic self disappear under a pile of profitable rubble. The legal documents spread across Richard's dining room table tell a story he never knew existed. Margaret, his assistant, sits across from him with her laptop, typing notes as they work through the night. Coffee cups multiply like evidence of their marathon research session, and Emma has fallen asleep on the couch, still clutching her teddy bear. This is extraordinary, Margaret murmurs, adjusting her reading glasses. According to these foundation papers, St. Mary's Children's Home isn't just a charitable organization. It's technically held in trust by the original founding families. Richard rubs his tired eyes. It's nearly midnight, and they've been digging through decades of paperwork that Sister Catherine retrieved from the orphanage's archives. What does that mean exactly? It means the building can't be demolished without unanimous consent from all living trust beneficiaries. Margaret's finger traces down a document dated 1952. The Hartley family is listed as one of the original founding members. Hartley? Richard's head snaps up. My mother's family? Eleanor Hartley, specifically. Your grandmother. Margaret shows him the signature page. She donated the land and helped establish the original charter. Richard, you're not just connected to this place as a former resident. You're legally connected as an heir to the founding trust. The revelation hits him like cold water. His grandmother Eleanor had died when he was 5, long before he ended up at St. Mary's. He'd never known she had any connection to the orphanage, never understood why the name felt familiar when he first arrived there as a scared 6-year-old. There's more, Margaret continues, pulling out another folder. Your grandmother established a provision that any member of the Hartley family who had been a resident of St. Mary's would automatically inherit voting rights in perpetuity. Richard, you have legal standing to stop this demolition. Richard stands and walks to the window, looking across the street at St. Mary's. The building is dark, except for a few windows on the 2nd floor where the night staff keeps watch over sleeping children. In 12 hours, he's supposed to meet with his investors for the final contract signing. In 60 hours, the demolition crews are scheduled to arrive. Why didn't anyone tell me about this before? I don't think anyone knew, Margaret admits. These papers were filed away in the orphanage's archives. Sister Catherine said she only started looking after Emma asked her to find anything that might help. Emma, even in sleep, the 7-year-old continues to amaze him. She'd orchestrated all of this, not just the dramatic interruption in the boardroom, but the systematic uncovering of information that could save her home. It's exactly the kind of determined problem-solving that Tommy would have been proud of. Richard's phone buzzes with a text message. His son, David. Dad, saw the news about the orphanage protest. What's going on? Call me. The local news had picked up the story. Developer confronted by orphan child, and Richard knows it won't be long before the narrative spins out of control. In the business world, hesitation is viewed as weakness, and weakness invites predators. Margaret pours herself another cup of coffee. There's something else you should see. She slides a manila envelope across the table. Letters from former residents. Sister Catherine has been collecting them for years. Richard opens the envelope and finds dozens of handwritten letters, some on expensive letterhead, others on simple notebook paper. Each one tells a story of how St. Mary's changed a life. Dear Sister Catherine, I wanted you to know that I graduated from medical school last month. Every time I help a patient, I think about how you helped me when I was 8 years old and afraid of my own shadow. I'm writing to tell you that our adoption agency is now helping place 30 children per year. The lessons I learned about family at St. Mary's shaped everything I do. My restaurant just won a James Beard Award, but the most important thing I ever learned was in your kitchen, helping prepare Sunday dinners for kids who needed to know someone cared. Each letter is signed with a name, a profession, a life that bloomed from seeds planted within St. Mary's walls. Richard finds himself reading faster, hungry for these stories of transformation and success. Then he finds an envelope addressed to him specifically for Richard Hartley, formerly Richie Hayes, from the class of '75. Inside is a letter signed by 8 former residents, now adults with careers and families. Dear Richie, we heard about the demolition through the St. Mary's newsletter. We wanted you to know that we remember the Christmas you bought teddy bears for everyone and the summer. You organized the backyard carnival to raise money for new playground equipment. You probably don't remember us, we were younger then, but you showed us what it meant to think beyond yourself. We grew up believing that people with resources have a responsibility to protect those without them. We learned that from watching you. Please don't let them tear down our home. Some lessons are too important to lose. With gratitude, the kids you helped raise. Richard's hands shake as he sets down the letter. He'd completely forgotten about the carnival, about organizing, fundraisers, about the countless small ways he'd tried to make life better for the younger children. In his memory, he'd been just another scared kid trying to survive. But these letters paint a picture of a boy who instinctively understood leadership and compassion. How many of these letters are there, he asks. Over 200, Margaret says softly, from former residents, teachers, social workers, community members. Sister Catherine has been saving them for years, documenting the impact this place has had. Richard's phone rings. The caller ID shows James Morrison, his lead investor. At midnight, this can't be good news. Richard, we have a problem. Morrison's voice is tight with controlled anger. The story's gone viral. Saves Mary's is trending on social media. Our other projects are getting negative attention. This is becoming a public relations nightmare. James, I need more time to... No more time. We sign tomorrow morning as planned, or we walk. And if we walk, we're taking our funding for your other developments with us. All of them. The line goes dead. Richard stares at his phone, calculating the financial devastation Morrison's threat represents. 15 major projects, millions in loans and commitments, hundreds of jobs hanging in the balance. The practical side of his brain, the side that built his empire, screams at him to forget sentiment and sign the papers. But Emma stirs on the couch, mumbling something in her sleep, and Richard sees Tommy's face in her peaceful expression. Some things matter more than money. The question is whether he has the courage to act on that knowledge. Margaret has been watching him carefully. Richard, there's one more thing in these documents. A provision I think you need to see. She hands him a single sheet of paper, a codicil, added to his grandmother's original trust agreement in 1962. In the event that any member of the Hartley family attempts to dissolve or materially harm the mission of St. Mary's Children's Home, said family member shall forfeit all rights and benefits under this trust, and their voting rights shall pass to the current board of directors. Eleanor Hartley was a smart woman, Margaret observes. She knew that money and power could corrupt even good intentions. She built in protections. Richard reads the provision again. His grandmother had anticipated this exact situation. A family member wealthy enough to be tempted by profit, faced with the choice between personal gain and the greater good. She'd essentially challenged her descendants to prove they were worthy of the Hartley name. Emma opens her eyes and sits up immediately, alert despite having been asleep moments before. "Mr. Richard, are you going to save it, St. Mary's?" He looks at this remarkable child who orchestrated tonight's discoveries, who carries her father's courage and her own unique wisdom. In 3 days, she could be homeless again, shuffled into an overcrowded state facility, far from everything familiar. "Emma," he says carefully, "what would your father want me to do?" She doesn't hesitate. "Daddy would say that having power means using it to protect people who can't protect themselves. He'd say that's what heroes do." Richard picks up his grandmother's trust documents and the letters from former residents. Outside, St. Mary's stands dark and quiet, but he knows it's full of dreams and potential, just as it was when he lived. There 30 years ago, the investors expect his signature in the morning. Morrison's threat hangs over his financial empire like a sword. But for the first time in decades, Richard Hartley knows exactly who he wants to be when this is over. Not the scared boy who ran away from trauma, and not the ruthless businessman who forgot his promises, but someone worthy of his grandmother's trust and Tommy's friendship. The choice is his to make, and the whole world will be watching. Emma holds the envelope like it contains something sacred. The paper is cream-colored, expensive, the kind used for important documents. "Sister Catherine said I should give this to you when you were ready to hear the truth." Richard's hands tremble as he accepts the letter. The handwriting on the outside is Tommy's, but different, shaky, labored, the script of someone fighting against time and illness. "For Richard Hartley, my friend Richie, to be opened when Emma finds you. With love and forgiveness, Tommy Sullivan." March 2025. March, just 3 months ago. Tommy had died knowing exactly where Richard was, knowing about the demolition plans, knowing that his daughter would be the one to deliver this final message. "Emma," Richard says softly, "how long did your father plan this?" She sits beside him on the couch, her legs swinging because they don't quite reach the floor. "Since the doctors said he was going to die. He spent a whole month writing letters and making phone calls and teaching me what to do. He said you'd be scared when you first remembered, but that you'd be brave when it mattered." Richard breaks the seal and unfolds the letter. Tommy's words fill 2 pages, and even in his weakened state, his voice comes through clearly. "Dear Richie, if you're reading this, then Emma found you and you found the time capsule, and you're probably feeling like the worst person in the world. Stop it. You were 12 years old when I got hurt, and 12-year-olds aren't supposed to carry that kind of weight. I never blamed you for the accident or for staying away. I understood even then. I need you to know that I looked for you for 20 years. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted to thank you. You saved my life in that hospital, Richie. Do you remember the night I woke up? You were asleep in the chair beside my bed, and you were holding my hand. The nurses told me later that you talked to me every day while I was unconscious. You told me about the new kids at St. Mary's, about the baseball games I was missing, about all the adventures we'd have when I got better. The doctors said that kind of connection can help coma patients find their way back. You called me home. Richie, you've always been the brother of my heart. I became a teacher because of you. Remember how you used to help the younger kids with their homework? You had this way of explaining things that made everyone feel smart instead of stupid. I wanted to do that too. Every time I helped a child understand something difficult, I thought about how you taught me that taking care of others was what made us strong. I kept track of your business success through the years. Richard Hartley, the self-made millionaire. I was proud of you, even if you'd forgotten where you came from. But when I saw the news about St. Mary's, I knew the scared little boy was still in there somewhere, still running from the guilt that was never his to carry. Here's what I need you to understand. Emma isn't an accident. I planned this. When the cancer got bad and I knew I was dying, I made arrangements with Sister Catherine. I knew about the demolition plans. They were in the newspaper. I knew you were the developer. And I knew that if anyone could stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life, it would be my daughter. Emma has been preparing for this moment for months. She knows about our friendship, about the promises we made, about the kind of man you were before you forgot. She chose to live at St. Mary's, not just because she needed a home after I died, but because she needed to understand the place that shaped her father's best friend. I'm not asking you to save St. Mary's for me, Richie. I'm asking you to save it for yourself. That building contains the best parts of who you used to be. The boy who bought teddy bears for scared children. The boy who organized fundraisers and carnival games. The boy who promised to protect the place that protected him. You've spent 30 years running from the guilt of my accident. But guilt isn't a life sentence, my friend. It's just love with nowhere to go. Take that love and do something beautiful. With it, Emma will need you after this is over. Not as a father, nobody could replace what we had, but as family. She's got my stubborn streak and your kind heart, and she's going to change the world if someone gives her the chance. I can't think of anyone better to help her learn how to use her power wisely. Remember what we promised each other in that time capsule. We said we'd be something important someday, and we'd come back to help the kids who were still scared and alone. Well, someday is today, Richie. You became exactly what you said you would. Someone with the power to fix things for people who can't fix them themselves. Don't let fear make this decision for you. You've been brave your whole life, even when you didn't feel it. Be brave one more time. Your brother always, Tommy P.S. Emma has one more surprise for you. Ask her about the oak tree. Richard finishes reading with tears streaming down his face. The letter reframes everything. His success, his guilt, even Emma's appearance in his boardroom. Tommy had orchestrated it all, but not out of manipulation or desperation. Out of love and understanding that transcended death itself. Emma is watching him carefully. Are you mad that Daddy planned it? Mad. Richard laughs through his tears. Emma, your father was the smartest person I ever knew. Even dying, he was still taking care of people. He said you'd understand. He said really good friends don't stop loving each other just because time passes or bad things happen. Richard looks at this extraordinary 7-year-old who's been carrying the weight of her father's final mission. Emma, what did he mean about the oak tree? Her face lights up with the first genuinely childlike expression he's seen from her. Come on, I'll show you. But we have to be quiet. Sister Catherine says the other kids are sleeping. She leads him outside into the cool night air, around to the back of St. Mary's, where a massive oak tree dominates the playground. Richard recognizes it immediately. Taller now, with thicker branches, but unmistakably the tree where Tommy fell all those years ago. Emma points up into the branches, where Richard can just make out something gleaming in the moonlight. Daddy came back here every year on the anniversary. He'd climb up and leave something for you, in case you ever came home. 30 small objects hang from various branches like ornaments, metal tokens catching the light from the street lamps. Each one is engraved with a year, 1995, 1996, 1997, all the way up to 2025. What are they? Teacher appreciation coins. Daddy got one every year from his school. He said he was saving them for the day you came back, so you'd know he never stopped believing in you. Richard stares up at 30 years of faith made tangible, 30 years of forgiveness waiting in the branches of the tree that nearly claimed his best friend's life. Tommy had transformed the site of their childhood trauma into a monument of hope and patience. The demolition is scheduled for Monday morning, but standing beneath this tree, holding Tommy's final letter, Richard finally understands what his friend had been trying to teach him all along. Some promises are too important to break, and some places are too sacred to destroy. Saturday morning arrives with the weight of destiny. Richard stands in the basement of St. Mary's, running his fingers along the original cornerstone that Emma discovered behind a stack of forgotten storage boxes. The carved inscription reads, "Founded 1952, a sanctuary for society's most vulnerable children, that they might find strength to become tomorrow's protectors." "My grandmother wrote those words," Richard tells Sister Catherine, who's brought him coffee and a box of documents. She knew something about protection, about creating safe places for broken things to heal. Margaret arrives with her laptop and a stack of legal briefs, looking like she hasn't slept. "The investors are meeting at 9, she reports. "Morrison's brought in additional lawyers. They're claiming breach of contract if you don't sign today." Outside, Richard can see news vans lining the street. The story has grown beyond local interest. National. Media outlets have picked up the narrative of a millionaire developer confronted by his own past. St. Mary's has generated over 1 million social media interactions, with celebrities and politicians weighing in on both sides. Emma sits quietly on an overturned crate, carefully arranging her father's teaching awards in a small circle around the cornerstone. Each one represents a year of Tommy's life, spent honoring their childhood promise to help other children. She's dressed in her best clothes, a simple blue dress that Sister Catherine pressed for the occasion, and her hair is neatly braided. She looks like she's preparing for something important. "Emma," Richard says gently, "you know this isn't over yet, right? The meeting today, it could go either way." She looks up at him with those familiar green eyes, and for a moment he sees not just Tommy's daughter, but Tommy himself. The unwavering optimism, the faith in better outcomes, even when circumstances looked impossible. "Daddy said the hardest part about being brave isn't fighting the monsters. It's choosing to fight when you're not sure you can win." Richard's phone buzzes with a text from his son David, flying in from Seattle, landing at 8 a.m. "Dad, whatever you're doing, I'm proud of you. See you soon." The unexpected support brings tears to his eyes. David, 35 years old with children of his own, had grown up watching his father build an empire, but rarely saw him build relationships. This crisis is somehow bringing his family together in ways that decades of success never managed. Sister Catherine spreads architectural drawings across a makeshift table. "If we're going to save this place, we need a concrete plan. The building needs significant updates to meet current safety codes. The electrical system dates from 1960, the plumbing is older, and we need accessibility improvements throughout." Margaret pulls up spreadsheets on her laptop. "I've been running numbers all night. Between the foundation documents, the trust provisions, and the public support, we have legal grounds to stop the demolition. But stopping it is only the beginning. This place needs at least $2 million in immediate repairs and upgrades, plus operational funding," Sister Catherine adds. "We serve 42 children currently, with a waiting list of over 100. The state funding covers basic needs, but programs like tutoring, counseling, and enrichment activities depend on donations." Richard studies the numbers, his business mind automatically calculating risks and returns. But the metrics that matter, most can't be quantified. The safety Emma feels here, the potential of the children currently sleeping upstairs, the promises made by 2 scared boys who believed in tomorrow. "There's something else," Margaret says carefully. "I've been getting calls from other developers. Word's gotten out about your situation. 3 different companies have reached out about purchasing your contracts if Morrison's group walks away." The implication hangs in the air. Richard's moment of conscience could destroy his financial empire, but it might also create opportunities for others who share his vision. The boy who once organized backyard carnivals to help St. Mary's could become the man who transforms how society cares for vulnerable children. Emma stands and approaches the cornerstone, pressing her small hands against the carved words. "Sister Catherine, can you tell me about the lady who wrote this? Eleanor Hartley was remarkable," Sister Catherine says, settling into her storytelling voice. She lost her husband in the war and could have spent her widow's pension on herself. Instead, she used it to buy this land and create a place where children without families could find hope. She used to say that every child deserves someone willing to fight for their future. Like Mr. Richard is fighting for us now? Exactly like that. Richard feels the weight of his grandmother's legacy settling on his shoulders, not as burden, but as inheritance. Eleanor Hartley understood that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives transformed, futures secured, promises kept. His phone rings. James Morrison, calling early. "Richard, I'll make this simple. Sign the papers in 1 hour, or we destroy you. I've already spoken with the bank about calling in your construction loans. Without our backing, your entire portfolio collapses. You'll lose everything." "Everything?" Richard asks quietly. "Everything that matters. Your reputation, your wealth, your standing in the business community. Is saving one run-down orphanage really worth becoming a laughingstock?" Richard looks around the basement, at Emma arranging her father's awards, at Sister Catherine organizing documents, at Margaret working tirelessly to find solutions, at the cornerstone carved with his grandmother's promise, at the time capsule that revealed 30 years of children who refused to be forgotten. "James," he says finally, "I'll see you in an hour." He ends the call and turns to find everyone watching. Him. The moment has arrived. The choice between everything he's built and everything he believes, between the safety of wealth and the risk of righteousness. Emma approaches him and takes his hand in her small one. "Mr. Richard, whatever happens today, Daddy would be proud. He always said that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared." Through the basement windows, Richard can see the sun rising. Over St. Mary's playground, where Tommy once climbed too high and fell, where children still play and dream and hope for better tomorrows. In 2 hours, he'll either sign papers that destroy this place forever, or he'll find the courage to honor a promise made by a 12-year-old boy who believed that people with power should protect those without it. The cornerstone sits solid and unmovable, carved with words that have guided this place for 70 years. Some foundations are meant to last forever, and some promises are too important to break, no matter the cost. The boardroom feels different this morning. Sunlight streams through the windows, illuminating the mahogany table where Richard's empire hangs in the balance. James Morrison sits at the far end with his team of lawyers. Documents spread before them like weapons of financial destruction. The demolition papers wait in the center of the table, a pen placed ceremoniously beside them. Richard enters with Emma, Sister Catherine, and Margaret. Behind them comes David, still wearing his travel clothes from the red-eye flight, his face set with determination that mirrors his father's. The investors shift uncomfortably. They'd expected a simple business meeting, not a family confrontation. "Richard," Morrison begins, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to getting his way. "I trust you've made the sensible decision." Richard remains standing, his hand resting protectively on Emma's shoulder. "Before we proceed, I want everyone in this room to understand exactly what we're discussing." He nods to Margaret, who activates the large screen at the front of the room. The first image shows St. Mary's Children's Home as it stands today. Weathered brick walls, children playing in the courtyard, hope made tangible in a building that's sheltered thousands over 7 decades. "This isn't just real estate," Richard continues. "This is where society's most vulnerable children find safety, education, and the chance to become tomorrow's leaders." Morrison interrupts impatiently. "We've heard the sob story, Richard. Sign the papers. Our investors have lost enough money on your sentimental delays." The screen changes to show the foundation charter document, Eleanor Hartley's signature clear. At the bottom, "My grandmother established this place with a specific mission to protect society's most vulnerable children so they might find strength to become tomorrow's protectors." Ancient history, Morrison snaps. The current owners want to sell. The zoning permits are approved. The demolition crew is ready. Sign the papers or face the consequences. Emma steps forward, her small voice cutting through the corporate posturing. May I say something? The room falls silent. Morrison looks annoyed, but the other investors seem curious about this child who's generated so much media attention. My name is Emma Sullivan. My daddy was Tommy Sullivan. He lived at St. Mary's with Mr. Richard when they were boys. She pulls out a tablet and connects it to the screen. I want to show you something. The display changes to a video conference call connecting to locations across the country. Dozens of faces appear, men and women of various ages, all looking directly at the camera. These are people who used to live at St. Mary's, Emma explains. Dr. Maria Santos in Los Angeles. She saves children's lives at her hospital. Judge Jennifer. Washington and Chicago. She makes sure kids get fair treatment in court. Teacher Michael Chen in Boston. He helps children learn to read. They all wanted to be here today. Dr. Santos speaks first. Richard Hartley. Richie, you probably don't remember me. I was 8 when you organized that Christmas toy drive. You taught me that people with resources have a responsibility to help others. I became a pediatric surgeon because of that lesson. Judge Washington follows. Richie, you helped me with my math homework every Tuesday for 2 years. You made me believe I was smart enough for college. Every time I rule on a child custody case, I think about what you taught me about protecting. Kids who can't protect themselves. One by one, they share their stories. Successful adults whose lives were shaped by their time at St. Mary's, many mentioning specific kindnesses from a boy named Richie who made them feel valued and protected. Morrison grows increasingly agitated. This is emotional manipulation. Richard, sign the papers or we're walking. And when we walk, we're taking your future with us. Richard looks at the screen full of faces. Children he'd helped raise. Now adults making the world better. He looks at Emma, carrying her father's courage and wisdom. He looks at his son, David, whose eyes shine with pride. He picks up the pen. Morrison smiles triumphantly. Finally, some business sense. But instead of reaching for the demolition papers, Richard pulls out a different document, one that Margaret prepared during their all-night session. I'm signing something, James, just not what you expect. He begins to read aloud. I, Richard Hartley, as heir to the Eleanor Hartley Trust and former resident of St. Mary's Children's Home, hereby establish the Richard and Tommy Memorial Foundation. This foundation will assume full ownership and operational responsibility for St. Mary's Children's Home, ensuring its mission continues in perpetuity. The room erupts. Morrison's lawyers scramble through their papers, searching for legal challenges. The other investors whisper urgently among themselves. Furthermore, Richard continues, this foundation will be funded by the liquidation of Hartley Development's luxury projects, redirecting resources toward affordable housing and child welfare initiatives. You're insane, Morrison sputters. You're throwing away a fortune. Emma climbs onto a chair so everyone can see her. My daddy used to say that the only way to really lose is to give up on who you're supposed to be. Mr. Richard isn't losing anything. He's remembering who he always was. On the screen, the former residents of St. Mary's begin to applaud. Dr. Santos raises her hand. Richie, I'd like to serve on your foundation board. I think I can help. Judge Washington nods. Count me in. It's time we gave back to the place that gave us everything. One by one, the successful adults volunteer their expertise, their resources, their time. The foundation that Richard just created already has a board of directors comprising doctors, lawyers, teachers, business leaders, all united by their shared experience of being protected when they needed it most. Morrison stands abruptly, gathering his papers. You've just destroyed yourself, Richard. When this romantic nonsense collapses, don't expect us to save you. David steps forward, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Morrison, my father built an empire by making smart investments, investing in children's Futures is the smartest thing he's ever done, and if you think we're doing this alone, you haven't been paying attention. Through the boardroom windows, Richard can see the street below filling with supporters, former St. Mary's residents, community members, media crews, documenting this moment of corporate conscience. Emma tugs on Richard's sleeve. "Mr. Richard, are we winning?" He looks down at this remarkable child who orchestrated his redemption, at the faces on the screen of people whose lives were saved by the place he almost destroyed, at his son who flew across the country to support, a decision that prioritizes purpose over profit. "Emma," he says, signing his name with a flourish on the foundation charter, "I think we already won." 6 months later, Richard stands in the renovated playground of St. Mary's Children's Home, watching Emma push a younger boy on the newly installed swing set. The October afternoon sun filters through the leaves of the old oak tree, where Tommy's memorial coins still hang like blessings among the branches. The transformation has been remarkable. The building gleams with fresh paint and modern safety features, while retaining the warmth that made it home to thousands of children. Solar panels crown the roof, the playground equipment meets current standards, and the basement has been converted into a state-of-the-art learning center. The inspection went perfectly, Sister Catherine reports, joining him on the bench beneath Tommy's tree. The state reviewers said we're now a model facility. 3 other cities want to replicate our programs. Richard smiles, pulling out his phone to show her the latest message from Dr. Maria Santos. "Foundation board meeting next week. I'm bringing blueprints for the Los Angeles expansion. Tommy would be proud." The Richard and Tommy Memorial Foundation has grown beyond anything he imagined. Former St. Mary's residents across the country have contributed not just money, but expertise, creating a network of support that strengthens with each passing month. Judge Washington helped navigate the legal complexities. Teacher Michael Chen designed educational programs. The foundation's reach now extends to 12 cities, with plans for more. Emma runs over, breathless from play, her cheeks pink with exertion. In her arms is a new teddy bear, bright yellow with a red ribbon, pristine and hopeful. Richard had given it to her on the day the adoption papers were finalized, and she'd named him tomorrow. "Papa Richard," she says, settling beside him on the bench. It still makes his heart skip when she calls him that. Not Dad, which belongs to Tommy's memory, but something uniquely theirs. "Mrs. Henderson wants to know if you'll speak at the Christmas fundraiser." Mrs. Henderson is the new development director, a former St. Mary's resident who returned to ensure other children receive the same opportunities. The Christmas fundraiser has become an annual tradition, bringing together the extended St. Mary's family for celebration and support. "I'd be honored," Richard says, wrapping his arm around Emma's small shoulders. David approaches with his own children, Richard's grandchildren, who've discovered the joy of having a grandfather who finally understands that the best investments pay dividends in love rather than profit. "Dad, we're heading home. Sunday dinner at our house." "Wouldn't miss it," Richard promises. His relationship with David, strained for years by his workaholic tendencies, has blossomed since he remembered what truly matters. As the sun begins to set, Emma and Richard walk together toward the memorial garden they planted in Tommy's honor. The bronze plaque reads, "Thomas Sullivan, 1963-2025, teacher, father, friend. He believed that every child deserves someone willing to fight for their future." Emma places tomorrow the teddy bear beside the plaque, a weekly ritual she's maintained since the garden's dedication. "Daddy would like what we did, wouldn't he?" Richard kneels beside her, looking up at the oak tree where 30 years of faith hang in metal tokens, where trauma became triumph, where 2 boys once promised to protect the place that protected them. "Emma, your father didn't just plan for us to save St. Mary's, he planned for us to save each other." He takes her hand, small and warm in his larger one. "Some promises take 30 years to keep, but they're worth the wait." They stand together. In the gathering dusk, this unlikely family forged by loss and strengthened by love, while around them the sounds of children's laughter echo through the halls of the place that taught them both that home isn't just where you come from, it's what you choose to protect.